Republican National Convention as we speak. The excitement is palpable. Or is that soul-shaking fear? They feel eerily similar. And if that wasn't enough news to cover in a day, there's another gigantic story brewing. Keep your news alerts on because the Democrats might be recasting a very big role.
Breaking news about President Biden's candidacy.
The New York Times, sources close to President Biden say he's beginning to accept he might have to leave the race.
Axios says he could drop out as soon as this weekend.
It's reached almost a fever pitch. Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi have all had very direct conversations with President Biden.
His political fate more precarious than ever.
An increasingly dire moment.
His fate now hanging in the balance, nearing the point of no return.
We are close to the end
of his candidacy. To be clear, when you're talking about an 81-year-old, you gotta be clear about that. Think about how strange this moment is. In the span of 1 week, one candidate got shot, and the other guy might drop out. I mean, years from now, children will be reading about this in history books. I mean, not in Florida. They won't have those, but everywhere else. And on top of that, all of that, Biden has COVID, which is no joke for a man of his age, especially because this is an unusual strain where the brain fog hits you 3 weeks ago. Now, for more insight on the quickly evolving state of Joe Biden's candidacy, we got full team coverage. Let's first go out to D.C. with Michael Costa. Michael! Whoa, Michael. Michael, what's the latest?
Jordan, I'm here outside Chuck Schumer's office as he tries to push Biden out of the race. But it's a very difficult, delicate situation because don't forget, he's the president, which means he holds all the keys.
Right, the metaphorical keys to power, the reins
No, Jordan, the actual White House keys. You know, they're on one of those big key rings, and he has a clip to his belt. There's a key for the Oval Office, a Situation Room. There's one key that just says room. We don't even know what that is. So they either have to convince Biden to give up the keys or wait for him to fall asleep and try to snake it off his belt with a broom handle.
Is that really the only solution? Why can't they just get a locksmith and get new keys?
I mean, I guess they could, but he's also the only one that knows the White House Amazon password. So what's the point of being president if you can't watch the new season of The Boys? Am I right?
Well, I mean, Joe Biden's an old man. His password's probably something like Joe Biden 1, 2, 3.
Jordan, this man is the commander-in-chief. I'm sure he has access to better oh, my God, that worked. That was it. Great. We're in great shape. Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you, Michael. Let's go now live to Nancy Pelosi's office. With Desi live at Desi. Desi, look. Desi, we know Chuck Schumer's trying to be sensitive. What's Nancy Pelosi doing?
Well, she's playing a lot more hardball, Jordan. She had a meeting with Biden where she just stared at him while doing that five-finger knife thing. It's very intimidating. She's also trying to mess with his head. She threw a pair of sneakers over a power line outside the White House.
Is that a threat?
Well, I don't know, but if there's one thing that freaks out old white people, it's sneakers on a power line. Yeah. How'd they get up there? Is it a gang sign? Is it a drugs thing? Is it hip-hop? Either way, it's time to move to Florida.
Wow. Very fluid situation. Thank you, Desi. Let's go out to the Capitol Hill with Ronnie Chang. Ronnie. Ronnie, talk to me. Who are you talking to?
Jordan, I'm talking to an opposing faction that is standing behind Joe Biden 100%. They're telling the president to ignore the haters, stay in the race, and do as many public speaking events as possible.
Wow. Which Democrats are telling him that?
No. These are the Republicans. They are gung-ho for Joe Biden, Jordan. This must be the unity thing that they're talking about.
Okay, Ronnie Chang, everybody. Look, whether or not Biden's candidacy is live, we are. And the reason we're live is that it's the last night of the Republican National Convention. And while most GOP conventions are about nominating a candidate and crashing the Grindr servers, this one... Look it up. This one seemed to have a higher purpose.
This convention is happening frankly, by the grace of God.
It is a divine intervention by God that President Trump is not dead right now.
This is divine intervention.
The bullet pierced President Trump at 6:11 p.m. Ephesians 6:11 tells us, put on the full armor of God, take your stand against the devil and his schemes.
This was providence.
God's divine providence.
A millisecond before he fired the shot.
A God-given
little
tilt.
Yeah, a God-given tilt.
If you didn't believe in miracles before Saturday, you better be believing right now.
God lowered a shield of protection.
God has put an armor of protection over Donald Trump.
God is not finished with him yet.
I believe we all witnessed a miracle, literally. From, before it happened, the flag above got blown in the wind and it got tied into literally what looked like an angel.
Divine origami, that's what we're going with? I mean, you see an angel, I see the G-string from the cover of that Black Crowes album, you see what you want to see. Look, I don't mean to nitpick God, but if God did save Trump from that bullet, he kind of procrastinated to the last second, didn't he? He could have stopped the gunman at any point during the day, but instead he waited until the bullet was in the air and went, shit. That was close. I gotta stop looking at my phone all the time, huh? All right, fine. Okay, every cult needs a leader who was chosen by God and has taken multiple wives. I get it, all right? And plenty of people stepped up this week to sing his praises. Now, one of the most fiery speeches was from Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. Although, that's an old picture of Matt Gaetz from a long time ago, like a whole week. Because when he came out to speak yesterday, he looked a little different.
Under Trump, we prospered, we were richer, inflation was low, and there were two genders.
And introducing the third. Wow! It looks like his eyebrows are reacting to a picture of his eyebrows. You can see why they chose him to make the case against Joe Biden. Inflation is so bad, his forehead is now a 6 head. And I can make that joke because I've been battling inflation for years. But last night's big speech was from Donald Trump's new running mate, J.D. Vance, who wanted to introduce himself to the world. And this is what he went with.
And while we're on the topic of grandparents, let me tell you another Mamaw story. Now, my Mamaw died shortly before I left for Iraq in 2005. And when we went through her things, we found 19 loaded handguns. They were stashed all over her house, under her bed, in her closet, in the silverware drawer. This frail old woman made sure that no matter where she was within arm's length of whatever she needed to protect her family. That's who we fight for. That's American spirit.
Yeah, that's the American spirit. Unhinged paranoia. You know what? I love how gun nuts in this country are always like, we're responsible gun owners. Anyway, here's a Glock I taped under my baby's crib. And let me just remind everyone that 5 days ago, their nominee was almost taken out by an assault rifle. And I thought that might lead to a moment of introspection. But you guys are like, you know what's hilarious? How guns are everywhere. But outside of his anecdotes about Grandma John Wick, the fact was that discount Ulysses S. Grant did not exactly set the room on fire. But the good news for him was that the crowd was so amped, they were happy to chant no matter what.
O-H-I-O, O-H-I-O. You guys are a great crowd. Wow. And
I've never seen a crowd so pumped that it started to engage in conversation. Yes, we are! Let's order food! How about Thai? By the way, if you're wondering why the Ohio chant is O-H-I-O, it's because it's the only word people from Ohio can spell. Go blue, you hillbilly But tonight was the final night of the RNC. It was the last chance to address the events of last Saturday. So, to heal a hurting nation, the RNC brought in their most dignified voices to deliver their message with gravity and respect.
What happened last week when they took a shot at my hero? And they tried to kill the next president of the United States. Enough was enough. And I said, let Trump-a-mania run wild, brother.
Whoa! Thank you. The healing has begun. He's going to make a great energy secretary. Now, you can laugh that one of the keynote speakers on the last night of the Republican convention is a washed-up fake wrestler. But I'll tell you what, I think Trump just locked up the vote of every teenager in 1992. Okay, we heard a lot of talk. Now it's time to bring the nation together with a sober message of unity. Who's next?
Everybody, get a fist up in the air! Now follow me! Say fight, fight! Say fight, fight! Say fight, fight!
Watch that angle down, Junior. Watch that angle. Yeah, that's how you achieve unity, by making our ears bleed together. Nothing riles me up like a 50-year-old man yelling at a bunch of 60-year-old men in suits to fight. Ooh, I'll be pounding the Lipitor tonight. Okay, but then it was a big event. Finally, it was time for Donald Trump to come out. And in case you weren't sure who he was, they put his name in big, bright lights like he was the world's most famous circuit elephant. That's right. Trump's going to be president of Broadway. And once the cheers died down and the speaking began, Trump made some big promises.
4 months from now, we will have an incredible victory, and we will begin the 4 greatest years in the history of our country.
Oh, I don't know. Best 4 years? What about 91 to 95? Wu-Tang, Nirvana, unironic fanny packs, Michael Jackson before it got too weird, you know? I'll put those 4 years against any in history. Now, all week we heard Trump was going to come out with a new message of unity. And you know what? He delivered.
As Americans, we are bound together by a single fate and a shared destiny. We rise together or we fall apart. I am running to be president for all of America, not half of America, because there is no victory in winning for half of America.
Which is why I'll be deporting the half that doesn't like me. Problem solved. You know what? You know what? No. I'm being a hater. This is a changed man up here. He's calling for an end to discord. Let's hear how we can bring about this unity together.
If Democrats want to unify our country, they should drop these partisan witch hunts, which I have been going through for approximately 8 years. And they should do that without delay and allow an election to proceed that is worthy of our people.
Oh, how convenient. So the key to unifying the country is absolving Donald Trump of his crimes. Anything else Democrats should do? America, just think about how united the country would be if Chuck Schumer punched himself in the dick. Think about it. Come together. But then Trump went on to tell the story of his near assassination on Saturday. And for a moment, I started to feel like maybe this was a different Trump. Someone somber, reflective. But then he slipped in just a small nod to the Trump we've always known.
They knew immediately it was a sniper and then began pointing at him. You can see that if you look at the group behind me. That was just a small group compared to what was in front. That's
how you know Trump is going to get through this. Even in the middle of a story about almost being assassinated, he felt the need to reflectively brag about his crowd size. I suddenly realized how insignificant we are, except my crowd size. Very significant. We're all just grains of sand on a beach. Although my crowd is more like a coastline. Big crowd, big crowd. But there was one other thing that made me realize this is the same Trump.
In Wisconsin, we are spending over $250 million here creating jobs and other economic development all over the place. So I hope you will remember this in November and give us your vote. I am trying to buy your vote. I'll be honest about that.
He's trying to do a quid pro quo in the middle of his convention speech. Slow down, my man. You don't get total immunity until after the election. So that was Trump's speech. A changed man who was basically the same man as before. So what do we learn from the RNC? Well, the campaign for president is basically one big job interview. The convention is where America checks the candidates' references. And to be sure, there were plenty of people willing to vouch for Donald Trump. You got ex-cons, domestic abusers, fake wrestlers, fake friends, his children, people sleeping with his children, and of course, the esteemed mayor of Whoville. But if this is a job interview, it's worth noting who we didn't see. Most of the people who actually worked with him in the White House. And if America's going to do our due diligence, we might as well call our references to hear what they have to say about him.
Anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution should never be president.
I think he's unfit for office.
Richard Nixon looks like a choir boy next to Donald Trump.
The gravest threat to democracy that we've ever seen.
He failed at being the president when we needed him to be that.
Doesn't like to read, doesn't read briefing reports.
Absence of leadership, really anti-leadership.
Wannabe dictator.
Shouldn't be anywhere near the Oval Office.
Nothing but contempt for our democratic institutions, our Constitution, and the rule of law.
The president has the understanding of a fifth or sixth grader.
Rex Tillerson saying this about the president, quote, he's an effing moron.
Okay, you know what? You know what? Good points. But did you see that flag? It looked like an angel.